think that's kind of what I gravitated towards. I love the line company stuff, kicking doors, doing all that stuff. But I started gravitating towards the recce stuff for whatever reason. I wanted to punish myself more. Hey, I want to carry more weight and go for, longer distances. Sounds like a great plan there. So, but yeah, I mean, that was pretty much where it started. And then throughout the, training cycles and whatnot, we would have like little glimpses of them work with RD back then. And then we had some guys that went to selection and whatnot, and they'd come back and they'd tell us about it and everything. Of course, we knew about Delta Force selection. And so I was like, well, let me try this. I'm young. I think maybe as far as maturity-wise, I'm still kind of immature. Maybe I can make it here and then build my maturity, learn, grow a little bit in the special operations community, and later on, apply for Delta Force to go be, an operator over there. So that was kind of like the plan after a while. And so, of course, none of it went to plan other than I did go to RRC. But
well, so how is it that they typically feed that pipeline then? Is it through like a 4187 type of thing, where you turn in a request for going through the selection, or, or are you handpicked, cherry picked?
So
it'd be a bit of both in some direction.
So circa 2008, because that's when I went to selection, I found out about it through a team leader in my squad, and he's like, hey, hit this email, contact this person at this email, and then they'll start sending you applications. So that you have to, pass the application screening process first, and you have to have, they said, hey, we want at least you have to be Ranger qualified, or else you can't even apply. And so, which made sense because they have senior NCOs there, and in regiment, as a senior NCO, you're going to have your Ranger tab, so especially as an infantryman. And so, I was just starting out with that process of just doing hey, I met the minimum requirements. And so, I'm a little young. I had already done my team leader time. So then we're going to, use some of that leadership experience in that blockade. You have leadership experience. So, and they're like, yeah, come on out. So it was basically, and your leadership signs off on it and everything. And mine, thankfully, was really cool about it. They were, all for it. And, which I was very happy about, because usually we hear horror stories where that's not the case. Like actually a buddy of mine, while we were in selection, he was my borderman for our platoon overseas, and we've already gone on several deployments and everything together, and he's a solid guy. Like, I've seen this dude hump for days and days and days with rounds and the tube, everything. Like, this dude's solid. He's a solid Ranger. I think he has asthma, or had asthma, or had something. Like, we go up to Dahlonega from Washington State, and it was like he was sucking. I was sucking. Like, the air just kills you. And when he got back, he didn't pass the 5-mile run for whatever reason, asthma or whatever it was, shortness of breath. You could hear the wheezing. And he gets back and he just gets crucified, like just absolutely crucified. They make him do Ranger standards, all this other stuff, and then, go to the doctor. I'm like, he just tried to do something better for himself. And so
that's because he failed a standard in there. If it would have been another or something else, he probably would have gotten as ridiculed.
Yeah. Well, but in my thing is, like, to me, it's almost subjective. I know we're supposed to trust another senior NCO to grade someone, and when I was cadre at selection, I did not ever grade unfair. I actually kind of graded. I tried to be strict, just right down the line. But I mean, if it's pretty darn close, I'm probably going to give it to you.
It should be unsubjective, because it is a go or no go type thing.
And for him, that's the 5-mile run. It's go or no go. And I'd worked out with this guy and everything, and it's completely solid. We'd run a 36, 37 5-mile with ease in Washington. We get down there, and it was like, I'll be honest. I ran a 39-minute 5-mile there at Dahlonega at 5th RTB.
Boy, I was close.
Die. Oh yeah, I was dying. But I mean,
that's a hard trail too.
It is, because you're running the keyhole. That's stupid.
That sucks.
It's miserable. But so it was really through the paper process back then. Now it's a little bit more. They've switched back and forth. Used to, it was only Rangers, only guys within Ranger Regiment, and then they opened it up to Army wide. If if you're a E5, E4, whatever, and you have your Ranger tab and you meet the minimum requirements, then you can put in an application, and then they'll review the application. They may send you an abridged psych eval, just to kind of get a baseline to see, hey, we want this guy. So you bring him out for selection, and then Sergeant Major Bishop, he changed it from where it was selection only, and then to basically be in, like, there is no selection. And so that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So guys would get picked, like Jason was saying, meet the minimum requirements. Hey, this guy, here's my guy, he's a stud. And then you show up and you still have all the same standards. You just don't have that land navigation, the selection portion. They still go to that portion.
They were sending them to like the RASP too, for like senior NCOs and first sergeants to go through and the officers. So, the thing with that is if you go through RASP 2 and you pass and you're selected, then you're now in the regiment. However, so what that does is that cuts them off from like when there is a selection portion, you're just TDY. So if you go and fail selection,
you get to go back to
whatever, then you just cut loose. But once you pass so you see what I'm saying? So they reshaped that model recently, last 2 or 3 years. So that doesn't do anymore. They have it back almost the way it used to be. But the problem was we were getting dudes, that were selecting, but they would like go and fail land nav, and then you had to find a job for that guy because now he's yours and you own him. So they redid the model and made it to where it's like still they can cut you off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's kind of odd that there for a period of time, and I guess now it's reverted back to you have to be part of regiment, or you can come in from the outside.
You can come in from the outside now. As long as you meet the minimum requirements. Like if you're at E7, like you have to have a certain amount of like time left before you're going to be promotable to E8. Same for E6, Ranger tab, 100%, that type of stuff. But once you meet the minimum requirements, you can come from they send invitations out.
It's just kind of weird that your entry into regiment was much the same way. You're an implant, you come in and everything, but to go into this unit, which I would assume to be just a little bit different, that you got to pay your dues first. There's a ladder here.
Yeah,
and it doesn't sound like there is a ladder.
Well, there is, but the thing with it, and he can tell you this is. What the RC guys what they do is you have to have a passion for that, like he says. Like it's a different thing, I can't say a lot of things, but it's a different set of skills, if you will. And that has to be like your passion, something you want to do different and better. So.
Yeah, and for me, one of the other things, not just the reconnaissance element or being in the woods type environment, unbeknownst to me at the time, we were going to do more urban reconnaissance and surveillance type things than being in the woods. The woods portion was basically reserved for, maybe a special training event like NTC or something like that, or for MLAT, airfield seizures. That was our thing. We would jump in at least 4 days prior. We have usually call it 100-hour recce. So, you jump in. You brief the battalion commander, whatever battalion you're supporting. Generally, it was 175, and so we had a couple guys in my team that were 175 guys. So they had a very good relationship there. We always had really good MLATs. As far as, the overall mission went well. We were all still free. It seemed like every time we would go out do an MLAT and do a recce, it's raining for 4 days. And then the night of the drop, it stops. And we're like, son of a bitch. And you just get on, like you meet up with your link up company or squad or whatever. And they just look at you and they're like, you can tell, they're like, oh my God. You guys are disgusting. Yeah, we're just like soaking wet and just stink to high heaven and everything. And we get on the bird and everybody's like, oh my God. But it's just the way it is. It's fun. I mean, it was the fact of doing the reconnaissance element, but then also kind of being a little bit smaller of a, company. We had small teams, 6 to 8 man teams. And I really liked that a lot. But I mean, I loved being being on the line, doing raids, ambushes, things like that. But I also really liked the reconnaissance aspect of it because it was, like Jason said, we did a lot of things. You're kind of a jack of all trades. You're really not a master of any of them. Whereas in the line, you're focusing on the CQB, CQM stuff. We did that as well. We could do clear rooms, do that whole thing. But we're also having to do cameras. I'm having to learn Photoshop. I'm having to learn this radio. I'm having to learn this special piece of equipment I got to take out to the field with me because it's going to collect something, some sort of data or whatever. And so it's much more of a technical game there. And so I think that's what it intrigued me because with most of us, our minds are going 1,000 miles an hour, and we're just trying to help calm it down a little bit and kind of get it to where it can focus. And once we get it to focus, we can really, make some things happen, basically. So it was challenging is the biggest thing, is what it was.
What is kind of the history of the recon piece of it? Does it go back to LRSA Vietnam days and stuff, where they, or is it something more?
So for me, what I feel like, just reading some history and whatnot, a lot of the reconnaissance element stuff, I think some of it started in World War II, going through the desert, doing some really long range patrolling out there. I think in Vietnam is kind of when it started to really pick up. And then you had, Special Forces, the Navy SEAL guys. And then for us, we started about 84. So we had battalion reconnaissance platoon, but it's much smaller. And it was kind of like a standards week. You go through a standards week, they do a psych eval, and if they want you to come on for battalion recce, then so be it. This one, like I said, you got to go to selection, got to go through the whole process. So I'm like, well, let's try that. Let's see if that'll get me kind of doing long range shooting, learning a little bit more, just learning something different, really, is what it was. And so that's what intrigued me, because, and with reconnaissance itself, I think coming from Vietnam, it's transformed, because Air Force does it, Navy does it, Marines do it, everybody does it. And I think everybody kind of has their own version of that. Even the BRP guys, the battalion recce guys, they kind of have their SOPs and whatnot. We have our own, and I think that's just kind of how all of them morph. Even 82nd, they have LRS and whatnot. So I think there's just that need for having that reconnaissance element, that arm there to help support the regiment as a whole. Mm-hmm. And
it's a regimental asset. It can be a battalion, but it's a regimental asset, not just a company or battalion. It's the regiment's asset. So they answer to the main guy. Mm. I can only say so many things, so I'm like, that's why I'm letting him talk.
No, you're good. No, go right ahead. Please.
No, I'm like,
yeah, no, you're probably better that you talk than he talks. So it's in talking about this, we get a lot of intrigue, and I don't know why, and I think it's just because people hear about it or something of that nature, and that's why I thought it would be kind of cool for you to speak a little bit around it, because whenever it's one of these super uber secret type of things, that's where people want to know more.
Of course.
Big shiny object.
Yeah. And for, regiment, it is one of those things that I think people want to understand. So you ended up how long did you end up staying with Recce before you end up going to become an instructor or selection?
So my military career has been laden with injury, like Jason was just talking about. Airborne injuries, like with that Carl Gustav jump, that hurt. Didn't even lower it. Did not even lower that sucker. I didn't know. I had tried trying to unfuck myself, basically, is what I was trying to do, because I'm upside down hitting the prop blast off the C-17 and just like, okay, well, I'm still alive. I'm just holding this one and just hold on for dear life. And then good thing is I went out first. You know where my link up point is? The complete opposite end of the field. That's like
that's a great scatter plan.
Yeah, it's like miles away. And so I'm like, well, this is the dumbest thing ever, but I don't know, whatever. But no, that was, just times like that, because there was so many dudes that got bad concussions. Like they got rocked hard, hitting the tarmac and whatnot, or you'd hit the ground and then your head hits the tarmac. I've done a couple of those. And so, I graduated which is called the reconnaissance training course now. Delta Force has the operator training course. So for us, it seemed fit to be reconnaissance training course. It's modeled similarly. Nobody even really knows exactly how it's modeled. Obviously, they do a lot of shooting because their big thing is CQB, CQM. They're just so proficient at that kind of stuff. And so for reconnaissance, it's a little bit different. So we're like I mentioned earlier, I'm learning about a radio. I'm like, I'm not a radio guy. But I was the radio guy, coming on the team. I'm the 6th. I'm the 6th position on the team, and I'm the combo guy now as an 11 Bravo. So you learn radios, you learn computers, you learn all these programs that we use within the company. And so it's basically kind of like with Delta Force. They start you day 0, and they build you up into what they say, hey, look, these are the standards. This is what we're going to teach you. Task condition standards, go. If you make it, you make it. If you don't, You know, maybe you get another shot, maybe you don't. And so we get done we started, what was it probably? Because I went to the basic course for military free fall late April, early May. And then we started a couple weeks after that. So that's about when we started. And then I believe it was about 8 or 9 months is what it was, that whole process. You go, you know, doing traditional recce, and it's all these different phases within the course itself for the specific training set or skill set that they're looking for. Like, hey, we're going to do, you know, marksmanship. We're going to work on long guns, or we're working on pistol, or we're working on M4, you know, whatever it is, or we're doing shotgun, or we're doing demo, whatever you want to call it. So each phase had its own you know, gates that you had to meet, and you'd have a board, you know, after selection. That one was very fun, 2.5 hours of just getting teed off on, because they had nothing but time. So you think about the worst interview you've ever had, and then multiply that by 100, and you leave that place thinking you're the biggest piece of shit in the world, and you're about to get kicked out of the Army.
Sounds like my RAS-2 board for E7. And then going to be a platoon sergeant, I was like, I'm fired.
I'm fired. I'm gonna let me call my wife real quick, tell her I'm done.
Start packing.
Yep, start packing. And so we get through that, and then we had what was it, like 6 guys that passed RTC, and so we got spread out through the various teams. I had one guy on my team that I went to RTC with, and so we just started it from there, getting dropped in on a training cycle, going through that, and it was 2000. And it was so I did one deployment with RRC in 2010. That was my first deployment. And then 2011, we were doing an MLAT in, it's on the border of Nevada and Utah right there. I think it's Wendover, maybe? I think it's like right on the border. And so it's super open, and we're doing an MLAT out there. And we have 4-wheelers, or quads as people call them. And so we're going to do land where the 4-wheelers are, where the DZSO is and everything, and then we're going to do a vehicle, you know, VDO basically. It was like 60K. We were going to drive in on vehicles, stage them behind, do all that stuff. Well, the low man, a.k.a. the team sergeant at the time, he did what is called a downwind landing. So we have a square parachute. We have a regular, not a static line parachute. We have a military free fall type parachute, which is the exact same thing as a civilian skydiving rig. We have an addition of a waistband just for equipment and whatnot. And so we're very, very big on briefing, hey, this is how you're going to land, this is what you're going to do. And he did not do that. And so that was my big beef with that. But anyways, we're coming across the ground on final. You're supposed to be into the wind, just like when you fly an airplane, you want to be into the wind so you can land, you know, safely and whatnot, and you're not just getting tossed around with a tailwind. So we had a tailwind, and I was doing probably 35 plus miles an hour because I had a navigation board on my chest with a Garmin, and it showed my speed. And I was doing well over 35 miles an hour at this point because we already had high winds. And I went one way, and my leg went the other way. Oh. And it was
literally coming in hot.
Oh, yeah. You want to talk about coming in hot. I was coming in hot, and I did not care at that point about, like, I was trying to be quiet, you know, maintain, you know, noise, light, discipline, and all that stuff. It was... And I've broken my tib fib on that same leg too, and that did not hurt as bad as this one did. I'd rather break both tib fibs than do that one knee. That was the worst pain ever, and it just snaps all your ligaments. So yeah, that was a good time. So basically, I'd blown out every ligament in my knee, and so go back, get it all healed up. It was about an 18-month process, and so during that time, during that healing process, is when I went into selection and training section of